All right. Moment we've all been waiting for, Travers Day, finally. So, got Pack, got Caleb. Going to break down some stakes races here, Travers Day. We're going to start here with race 5, the Forgo. Oh, by the way, congratulations, Pack, on hitting that late pick 5, you son of a bitch.
Oh, I thought you were gonna give me shit on 3 different forums today. You're not you're giving me props. What's up?
Hey, I got to be nice to you a little bit, right?
You don't have to, but I mean,
All right, so looking here at race 5, Pack, tell me why Matoli does not win this race.
I think Matola is the obvious favorite, and it makes a ton of sense. But I mean, Promises Fulfilled to me is a really interesting horse here. If you look at Promises Fulfilled since the Dubai comeback, consistently improving buyers. That last out race and the Nurad at Belmont fits really well with this field. And yeah, and I think also you're going to run into a situation. And I think Caleb brought this up last time. Matoli's never really had early pace pressure, and all of a sudden you're going to see a situation here for the second time in a row where he's going to run into the fact that he's going to have early pace pressure. Does he go stupid fast again and set up a closer? Yeah, I think it's a viable outcome here once again.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. Um, this is one of those spots where if you look at the card as a whole, there's a couple of strong favorites. I think Bertoli's going to go off at odds on in this spot. And probably justified so. And you look at the last race, and he did get some pace pressure. Strike Power took it to him, and Vanderbilt. And that being said, he had probably the deadest rail I've ever seen at Saratoga that day. So I'm willing to excuse that one a little bit. Also could be debated. Did the Met Mile kind of knock the starch out of him a little bit? That was a outstanding effort, just a monster effort in that race to win a grade one going a distance that's probably farther than he really wants to go. And yeah, that may have just taken a little bit out of him, and could have been seeing, some combination of a bad rail, some pace pressure, and maybe a horse that's cycling ever so slightly out of form. At odds on, it's going to be interesting to see. That said, I still think Matoli is a deserving favorite in this spot. I still think he's going to be a really tough horse to get around. He's going to be posted outside of the main pace threat and Promises Fulfilled, who drew the rail this time. Matoli, like I said, if you're willing to excuse that trip last time where he hit the gate and had a dead rail and some pace pressure, and also Imperial Hint just freaked that day. Take nothing away from that effort. Looking back, he beat Promises twice in a row prior to that in the Churchill Downs Sprint, and then again in the Metropolitan. So it's a tough spot for Promises growing the rail. He has been working pretty decently and has definitely improved since coming back from Dubai. 2 for 2 over Saratoga definitely helps. So it'll be an interesting race to see how they want to try to use Matola here, to see if they're just going to let him bang heads with Promises on the front, or if they're going to try to keep him stalking a little bit, or how they're going to set this up.
So one thing too is so I took a look at the seminar by the Sheet seminar, and one of the horses that they mentioned the 4 Killybegs Captain. Now I'm not exactly the best Sheets reader, but did you see anything with the sheet pattern there on the 4 that might might show that this horse can maybe win this race?
Can I get in front of this one before we let Caleb talk about sheets? Killybegs Captain is a horse that I think you have to use here. I really this thing works on the last that were really great. That last race at Saratoga, and that was probably the deadest rail on the face of the planet. And I think there's a huge amount of upside. This horse can probably sit off from what's going to be a stupid pace and gets to be the first run closer here. I think it's a very live long shot. It's one of those horses at 15-1. If you want to get around Matoli and you're assuming that this race may have a semblance of it falls, Berg's Captain is the horse.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So to answer the Sheets question initially, I do think there's a real strong chance we see a new career effort from Killybegs, captain, in this spot. He did catch that dead rail last time. Saratoga's had a bad rail in sprints, pretty much all meet, but there's been a couple weekends where it's been extra bad, and this was one of them. It was also a race where there was 5 horses, in a line with Juan Raison, the floating closer. Got a dream set up in that race. Killybegs was one of the ones on the rail who was dueling on the front end and then faded a little bit late. But he has improved significantly from his 4 to 5 year old season. He's shown that the top efforts haven't taken as much out of him in the past now as they have in the past. And I think that was a impressively good effort twice in a row, actually, not just in the Tail of the Cat, but also in the J. Narod Stakes back at Belmont, where he broke terribly, was 6 lengths back, pretty much at the onset, looped the entire field, actually got up to within about 2 lengths of Promises, who was on the lead by himself, setting a really easy pace. I mean, 23:46 is walking for a horse like Promises. So that was a super game effort. Just used up a little too much energy there. I think he gets a great trip here. If Matoli and Promises bang it out on the front end, I think Killybeg's going to be the main benefactor of that, assuming he sits just off them on the outside and then gets to make his run and get first run as the leader starts to tire.
Yeah, I mean,
sorry about that. Sorry about that, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, like,
I was just gonna say.
We went a whole
Josh.
we went a whole 90 minutes last time without this happening once, and all of a sudden you come in here and just shit it up with your ice whiskey over there. Anyways, I was just gonna say that yeah, I mean, in my mind, I think that Matoli's probably a single A here. I probably am gonna want to use a little bit of 1 and 4, probably just as C's if I'm gonna play a bigger ticket. But I would be totally fine just, singling Matoli here.
Yeah, to back up what Josh was saying there, I think if you're on a smaller ticket, you're going horizontals. Yeah, you single Matoli. I mean, that's the logical single, and I can't fault that at all. I think if you're trying to get around Matoli, you have some options in here, and I think they're all logical options. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll probably play this. Well, before we get into that, I do think I'm not using him, but I think we probably need to at least mention Firenze Fire in this spot. The horse is going to take money. He's 7-2 on the morning line. It's a service Ortiz combination, who's pretty much danced a lot of the dances since his 3-year-old season. Came off the Derby Trail a while back and kind of focused more on these one-turn miles and sprints. I'm not using this horse, even though I think he sits a perfect trip on the outside, just off the pace. I've gone back to this well 2 or 3 times now and trying to catch him on a decent race at a decent price. And he had a great trip in both the Met and the Vanderbilt and really just showed nothing in both of those. I mean, the Buyers didn't come back terrible, but he just hasn't really beaten many horses, hasn't really looked the same, and I'm starting to wonder if those Dwyer and Run Happy efforts are more of the anomaly and not the normal for a horse like this. So he's a horse that should sit a good trip, but is one that I'm probably going to let beat me in this spot.
Not going to let him necessarily beat me. He'll be a B on tickets for me. But again, he was a B for me his last time out as Vanderbilt. He's a horse that it's there. The talent's there. I mean, it's undeniable. I mean, he's 7 for 18 lifetime, but he's also only 1 for 4 at Saratoga. I don't know if he loves the track. He needs the setup to happen in front of him, and he needs to be ready to go. And he needs to bring his best. I don't know if he does here. I think he's a horse that I respect letting him beat you, and I understand where you would come at, and that the perspective of your one fall apart. He's that sort of in the middle horse. He's more of a grinder. Kind of he doesn't have that crazy turn of foot, but he's a horse that makes some sense here.
Yeah, I think if this race was 2 weekends ago, I mean, you're using 6 with the way the track was playing before. At least the past couple days, it seems like the inside is A-okay again. So I'm totally back just on using the 3 here.
Yeah, and just to throw it out there on a track bias standpoint, if you follow Jose Ortiz on Instagram, he had a photo up this morning of they took a grader and they completely regraded the inside of the track. Inside seemed much better today than it has past few days, and it seems like speed you could pass on the inside. I don't know if the inside is necessarily the place to be. I don't think there's any gold rail or anything. I still think you want to maybe be in the 3 or the 4 path in the stretch, but I think the rail was much better, and I expect the track to be pretty speed favoring tomorrow, which again helps Matoli.
Yep, that's all good information. In this race, I'm going to have Matoli as a single, and I'm between using Promises, and I'm definitely having Killybegs on a ticket. He'll probably be a C for me. Depending on bankroll and what I end up doing in the later races, I may leave off Promises completely. That's a bold move. I just have a tough time envisioning a scenario that he breaks from the rail and wires the field, or he breaks from the rail, puts away the other speed, and then holds off the late runners. So that's a horse that is either a C or one that I might take a stand against. But at the price, Killybeg has to make my ticket, and I do think Matoli is the horse to beat here.
Yeah, as of right now, I'm 5 deep, but I think the more I look at this, I'm thinking it's probably Matoli or Killybegs are the 2 horses I'm going to use. Probably Matoli is an A. I have Promises Fulfilled as the other A right now. I may do the same thing you do and take Promises Fulfilled out of that other A role. I just don't trust Promises Fulfilled. The figs have getting better, but it's just a horse I don't. On the last work, that's a really interesting horse at a price here. So
Yeah, and I'm a little bit more inclined. I think here, I think that there's a better chance of you finding a price in this race with, or not maybe not even so much a price, but a bigger chance of the favorite getting upset in this race than in some of the spots a little bit later on. So I think if you were trying to stay a little skinny, I think that this might not be the spot to single, but this is definitely, I think, it's whether or not you're going to use one, if you're going to use these other horses as B's or C's, in my opinion. I still think Matoli is a single A, but it's not like one of the horses that we're going to talk about a little bit later, where I think you could probably get away just using one horse.
Yeah. Just to add one little additional thing, Promises Fulfilled out of that last race, the work is not nearly as good as the work prior to that race. Makes me think that Promises Fulfilled, you may have that. People get really, touchy about using the word bounce, but I think I could see Promises Fulfilled bouncing off that last time.
Somewhere Jerry Brown is smiling.
Wait, is Caleb okay with bounce, or is it Tom that's not okay with bounce?
I'm fine with the bounce. Tom is the anti-bouncer.
Freaking yelling at JK about the bounce. Let's move on. Let's move on here to race 6. Ballerina. Another grade 1. We're looking 7 furlongs here. Caleb, what you got?
Well, this race got a little bit easier after workouts. I do think this race goes through the favorite, Come Dancing. On a pure buyer standpoint, and pretty much any speed figure you want to use, this horse is just head and shoulders above the rest of this field. She fired off, really since turning 5, she really turned a corner for Carlos Martin. She fired off 102, and then an absurd 114 buyer, 103 back in the ruffian, and then a respectable 97 last time in the Ogden Phipps, where she was probably going a distance that might be a little farther than she really wants to go, going a mile and a 16, and losing to probably the best filly out in the world right now, or at least in America right now, and going that 8.5 furlong distance. So I think Come Dancing is the horse to beat. I think she's a strong favorite and deserving favorite in this spot. I do think that she has to work out her trip, which I think is going to be the biggest challenge for her. she's always done her best running on or near the pace. Not to say that she's a need to lead, because she doesn't seem that way, but she does get a little bit keen when behind horses, and especially when behind and inside of horses, she gets a little bit keen. So I do think it'll be interesting to see how she handles this field, because I'm pretty confident she's not going to get the lead with both the 5 Mia Mischief and the 6 Meant to Stardom drawn in this race, who are both sprinters stretching out a little bit to 7 furlongs, who have a lot more gate speed than Come Dancing does. So I do think she's the best horse in the field, but I will be interested to see what they choose to do with her, in terms of if they send her early or try to take her back and let sprinters go, and then maybe try to angle out coming for home.
Yeah, I'm also interested in the trip here for Come Dancing. By far and away, Come Dancing towers over this field on Figs. And also, she picks up JJ here, which to me is a really nice fit for her as a horse. I think JJ is one of the best positional riders in the game. He's a guy that very much understands pace, and he understands where he needs to slot a respective horse into a field to give that horse its best chance of bringing its best game. I really think, Separation of Powers and Mia Mischief both have to sort of go. Probably also Meant to Stardom goes as well. So there's going to be a ton of pace on the outside. It's going to be sort of interesting how she does sit that trip. I do agree with you there. But I think if you look at her time form, Figs, she has this really, I don't think I've ever seen a horse that has a triple digit both early and late Fig. I don't think I've ever seen that. She has the ability, I think, to carry a ton of speed early, sit just off this pace, and she's just going to outpower them coming home. I think she's on this card one of the most singleable horses. With obviously we're going to talk about Chancelot, who we're all kind of eating chalk there, but I think she's the other.
Oh, you went quiet.
Sorry about my ghetto internet, but I think you have to get really cute to get around Come Dancing here. Quite honestly, she's just much the best.
And looking at the works, I mean, the horse looks loaded for a great effort coming in here. So I tend to agree. I think the 2 is going to be it's going to be real hard to get around here. One thing I will toss out here is Minute to Stardom, the 6, is per Brisnet is a lone E here. Now, whether or not it's the fastest horse, I don't think so. Separation of Powers is probably a little bit faster, and then Mia Mischief is probably gonna get out there too. So I don't really think that. I think it looks a little deceiving showing the 6 as the lone A or lone E. I mean, had a real great effort last time out, but I still think, like you were saying, I think the 2 Come Dancing is just primed and loaded for a great race here.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one horse, if you want to get cute in this race, I had wanted to get cute with Dawn the Destroyer, the 7 horse. Assuming we have all this pace in here, there's just a ton of pace. If this race really, really falls apart, problem was that last out work just looked terrible. So I probably will remove her from my tickets. I had wanted to use her as sort of that logical bomb, and I just can't see it now. And I think really this race sets up amazingly well for the 2, and I have a hard time getting around her. So yeah, I don't have much else to add.
Yeah, I think I would like either the 5 Mia Mischief or the 6 Minute to Stardom better if they both weren't entered. But the fact that they're both in here, they're both sprinters coming out of 5 and 6 furlong races. Minute to Stardom got the upset last time at 20-1, but Mia Mischief kind of let her go in that race and gave her the lead, which I don't expect to happen again today, given that those rating tactics did not work out very well for her. I have a hard time getting past Come Dancing. Separation of Powers is lightly raced, and it's not really a need to lead type. I mean, she came from off the pace in the test and came from off the pace in the Frisette. She's actually a multiple Grade 1 winner, but she's very lightly raced, and seems like a horse that just kind of has some health issues, some soundness issues, a lot of breaks in her running lines. So she's hard to really trust, and she's not going to be much of a price. So I think if she was going to be 4 or 5 to 1, I might take a chance. But if Come Dancing's odds on and Separation of Power is going to be 9 to 5, I don't think I'm really just that interested in her. I agree with you about Dawn the Destroyer. That's a horse I wanted to use, given the fact that the only real way I can see Come Dancing losing is if she can't really rate from the inside or gets a bad trip or a dead rail and pace melts. But that last work was pretty terrible, and she really hasn't shown much sign of improvement lately, even though she does, has caught some unfavorable pace scenarios. I guess if I wanted to get super cute, and I don't think I'll probably go this deep on any of my tickets, but I actually did glance at the one a little bit. I love me a horse for course angle, and this horse is 4 for 4 lifetime at Saratoga. She's really improved in her last couple of years for Diodoro, and David Cohen comes in to take the mount. It's his only mount of the day, I think so. He's actually only taken 5 mounts at Saratoga so far. 2 of them have been on this horse, and they were both wins. So I don't know that she was really beating a ton of quality horses in those starts. And that optional claiming 62, she did beat Talk Vuv to me and a few others who were halfway decent. Carrera Cat, who came back to win a stakes race later. She doesn't really need the lead, and she's going to be probably ahead of Pacific Gale and Dawn the Destroyer. So I could see her potentially being the benefactor of a pace meltdown if you really want to take a bomb. But I do have a hard time getting around the favorite spot with Come Dancing.
Yeah, I mean, the one negative I will say about Come Dancing is if you're looking at the buyer speed figures, they've gotten slower and slower. From the 114, the 103 to 97. I mean, she did, the 114 that she, came out with was off the layoff. So the horse can come ready off the layoff. And the works show that the horse is working well. But, I mean, if you wanted to get one negative, that would be it. The problem is that 97 that she raced last out is probably still good enough to win this race. So you would need probably another horse to step up, maybe a Minute to Stardom or Mia Mischief to step up a bit, and Separation of Powers and Come Dancing to not fire. And it's just kind of hard to see that happening.
Yeah, Josh. Go ahead, Mark.
I would say not to beat a dead horse here or whatever, but I would say if you look at the running lines on those last 2, obviously Mana 16th is not Come Dancing's distance. She wants much shorter, and she was at the last out versus Midnight Bisou, she was in the Ogden Phipps, she stumbled in the break and was rushed inside. 2 back, she was keen early and 3 to 4 wide. So I think if you look at, she wants to run 7 furlongs, maybe a mile. And if she gets the setup, I think she runs a huge fig back here. I think you can make excuses for her last 2, even though, last out she didn't win. I think it's just not her distance. I think it's just too far. And then in the 2 back on the ruffian, she had a rough trip and therefore didn't throw another huge fig. I mean, a 114 is just towers over this field. If she runs 100, she towers over this field. She doesn't need to even bring her A game to win this. So.
Yeah, that's the exact point I was going to make, is that I saw that at first too, and it's evident in sheets that her figures have been trending the wrong direction since that 114, but the distances have been getting longer. That's the first thing I noticed, is that she's probably stretching out to a little farther than she really wants to go. Certainly don't blame the connections for taking a shot at the Ogden Phipps, but I think the 7 furlong to a 1-turn mile hits her right between the eyes. And the thing about the layoffs is that she really seems to fire her best races after being freshened up. I mean, if you look all the way back to, the back after the Interborough Stakes, she had a non-effort, comes back 7 months later and, runs first by 4 lengths in an optional claiming race. And then she comes back on 2 weeks rest and runs 4th, not that good, comes back again and runs okay. Ultimately, every time she's laid up for more than, 2 or 3 months, she comes back with a big effort. So I fully expect her to be cranked and ready with her A game in the spot, even though her B game probably wins this race.
Yeah, I think here I'm going probably another single A here with Come Dancing. as opposed to C's, I think for B's here, I'm definitely going to use Minute to Stardom. I'm going to use Mia Mischief. And I think I'm going to fade Separation of Powers here, just because I feel like the horse seems to like second off the layoff a little bit more. Second off the layoff tends to fire its better races. So just coming fresh off the layoff, I think I don't think that the horse beats Come Dancing, and I don't think an improving Minute to Stardom or Mia Mischief either here.
Yeah, agreed all the way around.
Yep, I agree. I think Come Dancing is the obvious pick in this spot. Beyond that, I could make a case for any of them, and thankfully this race does not fall into either pick 5, so I don't need to play that. But yeah, I would put Come Dancing on top, and then I would make an equal case for about any of the others beyond that. Maybe take a chance with one of the more consistent types or improving types like Minute to Stardom or the one horse Special Relativity.
Yeah, I mean, Special Relativity,
Yeah,
I know we're not, we don't really trust the Briz figures too much, but Special Relativity ran a 104 Briz last time out, which is by far the best last out by any of these horses. So on the buyer figure and the buyer scale, much, much lower, but just something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I'm just going to toss out, I know Caleb had mentioned this doesn't fall into either pick 5. Tomorrow is a bit of an interesting day. You do have 3 pick 4s. You have a pick 4 starting in the 2nd. You have one starting in the 8th and one in the 10th. I realize it doesn't fall into either one of those, but it's just, it's worth noting that, on Travers Day, you do have that 3rd pick 4, which is, makes for some fun.
All right, why don't we move on to the Chancelot show here.
Yeah, so in the Chancelot Stakes.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not much to say. I mean, Chancelot drew the rail, and once again, maybe if this was 3-4 weeks ago, we might have been a little bit worried about Chancelot drawing the rail. I don't think it's going to be a problem here at all. I think wins for fun.
Yeah, let's put it this way. He fired an A work between his last and this. I've never seen one of those ever, period. I've just never seen one. I've seen A minuses. I've never seen a pure A work. He's going to win this. He's going to win it by multiple open lengths. And if you want to get around him, I mean, I don't know how you really do it. He just absolutely towers over this field.
Yeah, and to give context to some of the listeners, an A work is incredible. I mean, this horse went 2 furlongs in 22 and 2, 3 furlongs and 33 flat. He ran a 10-second middle furlong, and then went out for 5 furlongs and 56 flat. I mean, that workout is probably good enough to win this race. He's a freak of nature. George Navarro is on the record saying it's the best horse he's ever trained, and that was before he even ran in the Amsterdam. George Navarro's got some pretty good horses in his stable. I mean, he has Sharp Azteca, XY Jet. I mean, XY Jet just run the Golden Shaheen over in Dubai, and he's already saying that Chancelot is the best horse he's ever trained. I don't see how you get around this horse. I think if you try to get around him, you're hoping that, Jaramillo falls off when the gate opens, because I don't see how this horse really loses. Rail be damned. Call Paul. I'm sorry, buddy. You're probably running last if you try to go with Chancelot early. And I wouldn't want any other horse that's even close to a speed horse here. From a betting perspective, I think there's going to be incredibly little value in verticals. You might want to try to throw some of the deep closers in the second place for your exacta and try. Similar to what happened in the Amsterdam. It's almost like there's 2 separate races. There's the race Chancelot's running, and there's the race that the rest of the field's running. So you key him in top, maybe take a close that you like in second if you want to play this in the verticals. But otherwise, I think you single Chancelot horizontally and take the free space and move on.
Yeah, I was just to throw a little extra context to that. He ran a 121 buyer his last out at 7 furlong or 6.5 furlongs. That 6.5 furlong race, if you take either the first 6 furlongs or the last 6 furlongs, would have set the track record at 6 furlongs. He did it over 6.5 furlongs. The only reason he didn't break the 6.5 furlong track record is because Quality Road owns that record, and it's a record that everybody knows is BS because the fig that the timing was screwed up, and everybody knows that the Quality Road figure is faster than he actually ran. So he effectively owns the 6.5 furlong track record. The game in this race is going to be how much does he break the track record by. To throw it into Fig's standpoint, the best anybody else in this race has ever run is a 95. He ran a 121. So he basically has a 25 point buyer point lead over anyone else in this field at 7 furlongs. That we're talking, that's probably 10 to 12 lengths, something along those lines at 7 furlongs. This should be a show, and you're just gonna just want to watch it. It's gonna be.
Yeah, I think if you're going to try and make any kind of money on here, you're gonna have to either find the 4 between the 4 and the 9, Hog Creek Hustle and Baracho, and pick one of them and hammer an exacta. Because I see both those guys coming off the pace and probably sniping off the other tired horses who even think about running with Chancelot. But yeah, I mean, one wins for fun here.
Yeah, I mean, I was just one little last thing before we move on. The only way I see this, the only way I see Chancelot being beat is if Call Paul goes with him early, and they both run like a 20 flat first quarter or something, and it melts, and it has to absolutely completely melt. And I don't know if Chancelot might be good enough that even if it melts, he could still win, but there's a chance that you can get somebody like a Hog Creek Hustle to pick up the pieces if it completely explodes on the front end. And I don't see it happening. It's sort of those 1 in 100 chances that it does, but that would be the 1 in 100.
Yeah, I agree with that. When I see a 1 to 2 in the morning line and a horse that looks like a mortal lock, I always try to think to myself, okay, well, enforce myself to think of the scenario that doesn't win. And about the only excuse I can find that Chancelot does not win this race. Him and Call Paul are hooked up, going 20 flat. The rail is bad, or something to that effect, and the pace just absolutely melts. In which case, of all the closers, I do like Hustle the best by quite a bit, actually. His Woody Stevens was super impressive. He was pretty far out into the middle of the stretch and pretty wide in most of that race on a day when you definitely wanted to be on the rail. Nitrous and Baracho both came out of that race well, but they had slightly better trips getting that inside running for a long stretch. So Hog Creek Hustle is the horse that I'd probably like best to come running late if I was going to go with the closer. And the only other one I'd probably highlight might be, I don't think you'll get 15 to 1 in the morning line, but that's a horse that just had 2 just abysmal trips last 2 times out. Woody Stevens, he broke slow, he was hung wide against a gold rail day, and then Hog Creek Hustle actually cut him off pretty bad, causing him to take up in the stretch. I'm actually surprised he didn't come down for that, although Mind Control was never winning that race anyway. And then the last race, he was just loaded for a long time, concerned over at Laurel. Had no running room. It was a pretty questionable ride from Trevor McCarthy to keep him that bottled up for that long when you're the 2 to 5 favorite. But he never found running room. As soon as he did, he thought they'll swallow that field. If you can get 15 to 1 and believe somehow Mind Control, he's not a need to lead by any stretch, can be somewhat forwardly placed ahead of the closers, but still let the 1 and 2 go on a suicide mission. That's another one that if I was going to force myself to invent a situation that Chancellor loses, he might be a horse that I look at.
Yeah, I say I went 3 deep with C's here. I used Nitrous Mind Control and Hog Creek Hustle. I want all closers. I want nobody that's going to go, early. But this is one of those races where you kind of put your hands in your pockets and just enjoy the show.
Agreed.
I was going to say something, but I completely blanked. Let's go on to the 8th here. The Boston Spa. Pack, I think you're up.
Oh no, you're putting me up in front. Jeez. To
Yeah, I saw you
me,
leaning
if you
back.
want to, yeah, boy. I was gonna say, if you want to, if to me, this is the race on the card that obviously with the obvious defection here, this is the one that you try to invent a price with. I think everybody in this field makes sense in here. I think it's one of those races that, for me, being somebody who tends to play horizontals a little deeper, I'll be using effectively the entire field here, ABC structure wise. I think the most logical players for me were Secret Message in here, who's coming out of the Diana with a decent showing. And then also Indian Blessing, if you look back to the U.S. races in the fall of 2018, the figs all fit really well within this field. And the other one that I really I want to use the most of would be Masha, who was just amazingly impressive, winning an allowance here at the end of July. If you want to watch just some.
Hope you went quiet again. Oh, you're still. Are you sure? I think your cord might be messed up. Caleb, why don't you jump in real quick while Pat
Yeah,
figures out what's going
well,
on?
it's not that fun when we agree. So I was kind of hoping you'd pick some other horses, but that's exactly where I ended up for my top picks. I liked Secret Message, the 3-horse, and the number 9-horse, Mosca, best in this race. I agree. This is the spot you're most likely to find a price for. Maybe not the entire late pick 5, but at least out of the races you've covered so far. A lot of these are pretty evenly matched. I'll start with Secret Message. I thought her Diana was super impressive, actually. She went out against probably the 3 best turf fillies and mares in America right now, with Sister Charlie, Rushing Fall, and Homerique. And she ran a respectable race. It was a bit of a goofy race as Thais and Mitchell Road hooked up and really strung out the field, much by design of Chad Brown sending the rabbit out there for sure. But nevertheless, Secret Message ran her race, and she even looked like she had a little bit more in the tank. Forced a check while turning for home in the stretch and lost a lot of momentum. By no means was she ever actually winning this race. I'm not sure she was ever going to place better than she actually did anyway by getting 4th. But I do think she would have been closer to the lead 5 lengths that shown. She may have been maybe a half length or a length back of Homerique, because she did lose a lot of momentum as they turned for the stretch. I also do think that this mile to a mile and a 16th is going to be to her benefit. I think a mile and an eighth or farther might just be a little on the long side for how she really wants to go. So I think coming back to this, mile and a 16th is a great distance for her. And the horse has been training well. I mean, gets a little bit of class relief here, and it's really a horse that I think could be live coming into this. The other horse that Mark touched on was going to be the 9 Mosca, who was my next pick. She only has 1 local start here for Chad Brown, but it was a pretty impressive run. Don't let the somewhat lower buyer number throw you off. It was an impressive race. She had to wait a while and, alter inside and outside in the stretch in that allowance race. If you look back to what she was running against over there in France, she wasn't beaten more than a length to Homerique, 2 back, in the Prix de Psych Group 3 over there in France, and even won a race over there. Typically, these Chad Brown Euro imports are pretty live. So she's of the 3 Chad Browns, she is the one that I'm most interested in. But I think it's a pretty open race, and there's a lot of different ways it can go.
Yeah, sorry, apologies about my internet cutting down, but yeah, if you watch the Mazda stretch drive in that race, she was bottled up behind horses for absolutely ever, and Arad only was able to kind of get her out clear late, and she did the one of the most impressive stretch runs I've ever seen. Kind of diving between horses down the stretch. It was very, very, very impressive. And I would not let that slightly lower buyer kind of throw you off in here. But I mean, again, I think if you can make a case for most of the field in this race. I'm a deeper player. I'm 9 deep in here. Quite honestly, I'm using the entire field, and I will be playing it as such. I think it's a race where you could get a 10 or 12 to 1, and it wouldn't be that shocking.
Yeah, I kind of agree. There's probably 3 horses in here that I think I want a lot of. The 9, which we've talked to death, obviously has been working good. That last race was pretty bonkers. And the works just, I mean, it's the 9's going to fire a big race, not going to go off at 9-2. Probably going to be closer to 5-2 probably. And then
even shorter.
Yeah, maybe. The other Chad Brown 55, I think, has got a shot in here. If you're looking just strictly on Briz stuff, has a 10-point lead in the prime power rankings, which some people like to use, but with the exception of their last race, rattled off 4 wins in a row, and seems to really like this distance. And then the other horse that I'm going to want to use is going to be a little bit of the 6 Conquest Hard Candy. Won their last race here at Saratoga, won really close to being on the lead. And if there's one thing that we've seen happen multiple times at Saratoga as of late, is a horse getting on the lead, having a nice easy lead, and just running away with it. Now, unfortunately, Tyler Gaffleone's on here, and me and him are not seeing not on the best terms right now. If it was maybe like Luis Saez or something, I might be a little bit more excited about the 6, and the 7, who's just outside of him, also has a bit of speed as well. But yeah, I think like Pac was saying, pretty much all of these horses are you can make a case for pretty much every single one. If you're very skinny in other legs, this might be the leg where you do the all button, not caveman style, of course, but your A, B's, and C's here. But if I were to just limit myself to 3 horses, I think I would go in the order of 9, 2, and the 6 here.
Yeah, I really kind of dig your Conquest Hard Candy play here, to tell you the truth. That was a horse I would want some of, but I can see that setup where that horse does get loose on the lead and can kind of go and steal. Also, if you're a horse for course kind of guy or girl, the 6 is your horse for course angle horse. Again, 2 for 2 over the track. Horse only has 4 lifetime wins. 2 of them happen to have happened at Saratoga. So obviously, Conquest Hard Candy really enjoys the surface at Saratoga.
And for all the ladies out there, Mark is single.
Thanks, buddy. Thanks.
Yeah, I agree. I think the speed's always dangerous in these races, especially when it doesn't have a clear-cut, course that is going to go. That kind of defaults to Conquest Hard Candy. Gaffleone's going to have one job, which is going to go be in front and run as long as you can. So she's up against it. These are better horses than she's normally been against, but you're going to get a price and you're going to get a thrill for at least a minute. So I don't mind that at all. My top picks in here and who I'm using most heavily is going to be the 3 Secret Message, the 9 Masca, and then I am going to use a lot of the. All of her local starts were pretty strong. I think that Kidura and a few others would be well bet in a race like this, and she wasn't beaten badly by some probably better horses than what she catches here. And I do like Florent Drew quite a bit. I like the fact that he gets up. I think he's an underrated rider, and I think that she could be one that I'm hoping to get every. She's one that I will be using prominently, trying to get some base, trying to get some value into this ticket.
And you were talking about the 5 there, Indian Blessing, right? You cut it out.
Correct.
There.
Yeah, the 5 Indian Blessing.
Yeah, and I mean, if you watch any Arlington like I do, pretty much on every single one of the big days at Arlington, Giroux just shows up and decides to win like 4 races on the turf because apparently if he's in the Midwest, he like he rides, I don't know, twice as good for some reason. He's one of those guys that, especially when Kentucky Down starts here in a week or two, and if you follow any Kentucky tracks, he's no slouch on the turf.
Yeah, he's also pretty cool to follow on Instagram as well, Flo the Jock. But yeah, Florent Giroux is a hell of a good jock. And also, if you're a Figs guy, if you look at those 3 starts from Indian Blessing back the fall of last year, those are actually the best 3 Figs in this race by quite a bit. So, at 8-1 on the morning line, that's a pretty spicy morning line for a horse that makes a lot of sense on a Fig standpoint.
All right, let's move on here to the personal ensign here. I guess I'll just kind of start off here. I've thought about this a little bit, and I kind of feel like this might be one of those races where you probably want to take a stand, especially with all of some of the chalk that we're seeing in some of the other races. I mean, it depends on how you're playing. I don't play usually anything bigger than a pick 4, so I don't know how this race fits in with the other chalk in the earlier pick 5s. But I think here, if I had to go with anyone, I think I'm going to have to go with the one with Midnight Bisou here. Midnight Bisou's yet to lose this year, which is pretty incredible because she's gone against pretty much every single horse that's in this race and beaten them. Beaten the late twice, and they're like, as much shit as we give Mike Smith for giving bad rides, for some godforsaken reason with Midnight Bisou, he seems to always give a pretty decent ride, and even if the ride looks a little suspect, he always seems to get out of trouble and get her home. I think Midnight Bisou's probably the I don't think I'd be crazy by saying the best filly in training right now.
Best filly in training on the dirt in the United States. I would give you that one. But yeah, I completely agree with you, Josh. I think Midnight Bisou is the horse to beat here. I think the Wise Guy horse is Elate. Elate has kind of the works coming in here, but my God, I want to fade Elate. I just never have trusted her. And she's also a horse that has run some big figs, but she doesn't actually repeat off those big figs when she does. She seems to need a race or two to kind of get back to her best form. And I think, from a pace setup standpoint, we know that I think you're going to get some pace in here. Coach Rocks has definitely got to go. And I think maybe she's a Julie as well a little bit. I think, God, Midnight Bisou, with Monomoy Girl being on the sidelines with an injury, I think Midnight Bisou is the best older distance horse in the country, and I think that's a pretty easy thing to say. I have a hard time going much past.
Oh, there he goes again.
I think we lost Mark's audio.
It's dude, we give you like 30 seconds and then that's it, man. You got to wrap it up, all right?
Josh just muted you locally after you.
Yeah, you did cut me off after 20 seconds. Okay.
We got to get that little box from Chappelle's show, the wrap it up.
But I agree. I think this is the race where if you're a small bank player, you kind of have to take your shot and probably single one of either Midnight Bisou or Elate. If you have the means to, I would recommend using them both probably equally. Midnight Bisou has been just, like we said, the best filly in training this year on the dirt. She's undefeated this year and really seems to just be another beast as a 4-year-old. The only question really for her might be, she's 5 for 5 this year, including a couple. But lifetime, she's 0 for 3 at the distance of going a mile and an eighth. Now, I'm not willing to say she can't get watch her races, live. She doesn't look like the horse that can't go an extra 16th of a mile. I mean, she looks phenomenal in all of her efforts. I mean, her wins look effortless by and large. So I'm not willing to say she can't get the distance. And I think that a lot of those mile and an eighth efforts were they were all actually as a 3-year-old. I think she's better than she was then. And every one of those defeats came to Monomoy Girl. It was probably just a better filly at that point. So I'm not that worried about the distance, although I do think it's probably on the long side Midnight Bisou wants to do. Conversely, I think it's on the short side what a late really. I would actually not mind seeing a late take a stab at the Breeders' Cup Classic. There's not any standout males in the older dirt division. And a late is a true classic distance kind of horse. She relishes those 10 furlong type races. She didn't look that sharp when getting beat twice by Bisou earlier this year, but she did look a lot better when she got the mile and an eighth in the Fleur de Lis handicap, and then looked just absolutely outstanding in the Delaware handicap back in July, where she was an easy winner by 4, and it could have been 14 if she was really asked. So I do think that these are your two obvious favorites, your two contenders in this spot. They're both pretty much capable of making their own trip. I don't think the pace will be to either of their disadvantage. And I think the distance kind of splits the middle, whereas a late would have the edge going a mile and a quarter or a mile and, 3/16, and Bisou has the edge going a mile and a 16. So I do think this is going to be a fair neutral ground distance-wise for both of these fillies and mares. But I think I don't want to get beat by one versus the other, so I'm going to use both prominently. I don't see anyone else in this field who could even come close to competing with these two. If I had to choose one, I would Bisou, just because I do think she's still improving and she's still showing signs of, we may not have seen the best Bisou yet. I haven't seen the late return to that personal ensign effort from last year yet this year. Abel Talisman never returned to her form, so I would lean Bisou over a late, but I certainly don't want to be knocked out by a late or Bisou if I only use one of them. But I wouldn't blame anyone with a smaller bank just singling here and trying to move on.
Hey, Caleb, what's your feeling here from a pace setup standpoint? Because to me, on paper, Coach Rocks is the only pace. Is there a chance here that Coach Rocks can get loose, walk the dog on the front end, and steal this?
I want to say no. Coach Rocks is probably the most obvious of the leaders. I do think she's a Julie, wants to be fourthly placed. Maybe not on the lead, but she's going to be up there, as well as Golden Award, who wants to be fourthly placed as well. I anticipate Coach Rocks to make the lead, but if you watch her last race, she made the lead. It was an easy lead on a slow pace. They went 24-4, 49 flat, going a mile and a 16. She had no pace pressure, and Midnight Bisou still just absolutely rolled by her. And it was a length defeat, but it was never a question. Bisou could have won by more had she been asked. If she couldn't get it done there, I don't see her really getting it done here unless she runs into some kind of just crazy speed bias, or the other speeds absolutely don't go, and Elite and Bisou both misfire.
Yeah, I sort of have the same feeling. It's just always one of those things where you kind of draw it on paper and go, boy, the pace in here is a little suspect. There's a couple of these that need a little pace to fire into. Do we try to get cute and get around somebody here?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of races in this sequence where you might want to be cute and try to beat a favorite. I don't think this is a spot where you do that. I think you take Bisou, Elate, either or both, and move on and use that money to find prices elsewhere.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So.
All right, let's. Well, we do have a question from the chat asking, what about Wildcat the 5?
Oh my God, Wildcat. I burnt so much money with Wildcat. Let's just, my God. It's the horse that just seems the logical. Like you could expect her to step up and take that next step forward, and she just never does. You obviously see Jose Ortiz got off from Wildcat. I think Wildcat's running style is probably really, really similar to like an Elate, and I think Elate's just a better horse. Wildcat's never really taken that next step forward. You would expect to see the horse after coming to the States, and you just always want a little more. I don't. I mean, I want to love her, but I just can't see it. I just can't get there.
Yeah, Wildcat is super consistent. She's going to give you that upper 80 to lower 90 buyer. She's going to give you that off the pace, coming at you late kind of run. But she's just a worse version of a late. Hit the nail on the head. It wouldn't surprise me to see her round out the trifecta. One of the two favorites misfires. She could run second, but I have a hard time envisioning a scenario that she can actually win this race.
Yeah, I very much agree.
I would actually go Golden Award if I was going to pick any horse beyond the top two, but in all likelihood, I'm just going to take the two favorites and move on.
Yeah, I would agree. I think in this type of race, Bill Mott scares the hell out of you. He's got those he's that guy that you say, oh, geez, there's two logicals. And, oh, yeah, there's a Mott horse. And he's the guy who's going to burn you when that happens. So, yeah, I would say outside the top two, Golden Award is the one that's sort of an interesting horse that might be able to sit a trip. And it's probably a seahorse at best for me. But, yeah, I would agree with you there, Caleb.
Yeah, I mean, at least for me, like if I was going to use to round out a trifecta or anything like that, I think I would probably use a little bit of She's a Julie. I think that, hopefully that she's going to be forwardly placed and probably going to grab the lead between her and Coach Rocks. I think the pace figures are pretty similar. But yeah, once Midnight Beast gets going, I don't think there's going to be any catching her. And I see her in a late battling it out down the end.
Yeah, completely agree.
Okay, we have race 10, grade 1, the Sword Dancer sponsored by Channel Cat. What do we think here? Not that I gave away my hand or anything there.
Oh, geez. Todd Fletcher, distance on the turf? Really? Really, Josh? Really?
Hey, I mean, look at that last race, all right? And look, we got my boy Sai as a board. If we,
I'm with you, Josh.
I sort of am as well. I can't beat him up too much here. Just to kind of throw the race to a box. Again, there's no massive standout here. There's a number of horses that I think make a lot of sense. I'm probably more on the Yo Prima bandwagon. A Yo Prima or a Channel Maker over getting to Channel Cat, but yeah, I mean, you guys can talk up the logic on either of those other two. I think again, this is a race where you do want to spread, and you're going to be a little deeper in here if you're a horizontal player.
Yeah, I'm excited for this race, even if it is probably one of the less talent-laden sword dancers we've seen recently. And that's saying something considering Glorious Empire won last year. But I'm excited because I want to beat the favorite for once in this sequence. I do not really like Annals of Time. I'm going to take a stance against this horse. I haven't decided if she makes it on a saber ticket. I know he's not. So I'll come back to that in a moment. But I agree with Josh and Channel Cat. And mostly what I liked was I was backing him in the United Nations, and Hunter O'Reilly somehow won that race. Channel Cat was not the favorite or anywhere close on the morning line, but took a lot of money that day. He then comes back in the Bowling Green and beat a lot of the foes in here today. He kind of stole it a little bit with a very Saez ride. They broke, kind of felt the pace wasn't going to be that quick, and Saez just sent this horse. This is a horse that's never really been first call in his career, and just a really crafty ride by to go out there and get that. But I don't think this horse needs the lead by any stretch to take the jump. If you watch that, I mean, he's never gone wire to wire before. And if you go back and watch that race, the horse looked like he was beat turn for home. Primo had a beautiful trip up the inside after having to take up a little bit early. A hole opened up along the hedge, and Primo looked every bit of a winner coming for home, as did Channelmaker looming on the outside. And Channel Cat managed to fight back. I think actually Primo put a head in front at some point in the stretch. And Channel Cat dug in, repelled challengers, and actually went back to win by a semi-comfortable half length with Arklow and a few others closing late. I thought that was a super game effort and really impressive. So I really like Channel Cat here. I'm thinking you'll get every bit of 5-1, if not a little bit more. He has a win going around 3 turns, which is something you don't see too often these days, but his distance shouldn't be an issue. He's got to win at this distance. He's got to win at this track. And I'm really interested in Channel Cat in this spot.
Yeah, I mean, I see the only other pace that I see might be coming out of here might be out of the 2 Tis Morning. But, I mean, Saez wants to be aggressive here. We saw what happened last year in the Sword Dancer with, was it Empire? Glorious Empire. There we go. Wiring this. And, I mean, we've just seen it, time and time again at Saratoga where Saez gets on the lead with a horse and it's just gone. Like, it's over.
I mean, you could make the same. I completely agree with you, Josh. I totally agree with you. Say Dylan Davis did the same thing today, but let's not talk about that. I think the speed is all drawn inside here. I think it sets up everybody on the outside, and but I think this is one of those races again. Where you can sort of dig around in here and find a price you like. I mean, there are a few horses that make sense. I think Pillar Mountain scratches because Pillar Mountain is going to be it ran 2 days ago. But besides that, I think a number of these players, and I agree with Caleb. I think I would fade Annals of Time in here as well. I just don't think the figs are quite as good. For me, it's going to be a little bit of Yo Prima, and it's going to be a little Channel Maker as well, and also Channel Cat, who you guys have been talking about quite a bit, seems to be the works horse. That's the horse with the best recent work. So I think those are the 3 logical players, and I think you kind of build a ticket around those as A's, maybe some of the prices as B's.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is a race you want to spread, especially if you're taking a shot against the favorite. I would expect an honest pace in this race because I can't imagine any reason that the 1 horse Proven Reserves is in for Chad Brown, if not to be a rabbit for Annals of Time. The horse has never raced on the turf. He has very little turf pedigree, and his buyers are nowhere near competitive. Assuming this horse isn't just entering and hoping it gets scratched off, the only way this horse is here is to set an honest pace. I don't think that's necessary because the 2 is also going to push the pace. Tis Morning. He's also one that looks like he'd be quite surprising if he comes in. So I agree with you. I do like Channel Cat probably the best. Other horses I'm going to be using prominently would be Channel Maker. This horse is one of the most frustrating horses in all of thoroughbred racing for me. He's the horse that you can't ever really leave off your. He's capable of running just an outstanding race, like he did in the Man of War, like he did back in the Turf Classic Invitational. I mean, he can just really run some huge numbers, and he's always there at the end. But he's tough to trust. He is a consistently inconsistent horse, and you get Rosario up, just adds to the madness sometimes. So he's a horse that I'm going to be using strongly. He wasn't beaten much in that last race, and he's pretty wide around 3 or 4 wide around most of his turns. So I do like Channel Maker. And the other horse I want to use is the 9 horse, Saddler's Joy. This is another horse that can be frustrating, but he is a 2-time Sword Dancer winner. He was beaten last time when Glorious Empire took the field gate to wire after getting a pretty easy lead. And then last race in the Bowling Green, first effort after a pretty long 9 or 10 month layoff following the Turf Classic, where he ran 3rd to Enable and Magical, arguably the top 2 turf horses in the world. So he came back in the Bowling Green, ran his typical race, but if you watch that replay, he was inside and along the hedge for most of that race and never had running room until less than a 16th of a mile to go. When he was finally set down, he was able to make some ground and gained about 2 lengths and what was pretty much a blanket finish. I like him to improve second time off the layoff. I like Lescano getting on. With all due respect to Castellano, it's not that surprising that he gets on the Chad Brown mount. I think Lescano is equally capable in this position. And I really like, this horse to take another step forward and definitely has some of the back class to compete with some of these on his best day.
Yeah, I have no problem with Settler's Joy here as well. I think it's the kind of horse that that can string together a bunch of multiple races in a row. JJ getting off does no concern here. I'm assuming it's JJ got on the chat. He went to where he's going to make his money. And I have no issues with Sadler's Joy here. Besides, just the general fact of it's a deep race, and I think Sadler's Joy to me is a B, but I would have no issues. I think we'll say though that 9-2 morning line, you will get better than that. I think you're going to probably get more like a 6-1 sort of a range on Sadler's Joy, which I think makes the horse much more playable.
Well, the horse has not won since March of 2018, so not saying that hasn't run any good races or anything like that, but has gone on a pretty extensive losing streak here.
You're also talking about a horse that's only 6 for 23 lifetime, 2 for 7 at Saratoga. So it's a horse that doesn't win consistently. This is not a monster. It's a horse that up. Obviously, he needs the pace up in front of him, and you're probably going to have the Chad Rabbit in here. If the Chad Rabbit's going to set up everybody behind, sets up set.
Yeah, last thing I'd want to hit on is that if Pillar Mountain ends up running here, I think he's scratched out of that turf marathon this week. He's one at a probably giant price I'd be interested in. I'm not sure he ends up running, but if he does, he's one that I think could be sneaky at probably double-digit odds in this position. He's lightly raced, he's ever improving, and he would need to continue improving in some of these. But he is probably the one that I would be most interested in at a pricing spot like this.
Yeah, again, I made a Mountain ran this week. Let me do a little digging here real quick.
Yeah, I think he was in the John's Call on Wednesday, scratching.
Yeah, he was in the John's Call. Did he scratch out of that? He may have. And if he did, he's one of the works horses in here. I assumed he was out of this race. If he does play in this race, yeah, I completely agree with you. He's won 2 straight. I don't love. I mean, Rosario gets off, but lightly raced horse. You're expecting a bit of an improvement here. Horse that Byers is consistently been improving. It's a very logical horse to get around here at a price.
All right, why don't we move on to the Travers here? So I haven't looked at the works yet. However, I've heard the works have made this much more complicated than we originally thought. Can anyone confirm or deny?
No, the rumor is 100% true. I haven't even looked at works, but I think Caleb and I were chatting about this. We've been chatting about it for a week or so. That I had wanted to love Tacitus coming off that. He fell on his face in the in the prep for this. And I had really wanted to get around the horse and just wanted to be like, okay, I'm going to single Tacitus, coming out of that Jim Dandy. And the more I look at this race, the more I go, this is one of those all button set type of races, or not necessarily all button, not a blanket, but you're going to create a structured ABC. You're going to get cute. You're going to pick your opinions, find the horses that make the most sense in here, and you're going to leverage around those. I think there's a number of horses in here that are very, very logical, and this is one of those races you're going to have to be a little deep in.
Yeah, I completely agree. I left the Jim Dandy, watching that race anyway. I wasn't there. and left that race thinking I'm betting Tacitus back in the Travers. He's a standout. And then I kind of had that thought until a couple of days ago when I finally saw the entries and saw the draw and else and kind of poured over some of the past performances. And Tacitus probably is, maybe not the top horse in this field, but easily one of the top horses in this field. But he's so difficult to trust. And I think this race really runs through what you think of Tacitus. If you can look at him and say he's a hard luck horse who's had a bad trip in the Derby where he took a lot of kickback and he wasn't fond of that and was coming on late. And then the Belmont, he was in the parking lot getting the hot dog wide while there was a golden rail on the inside of Sir Winston. And then the Jim Dandy, instead, he stumbled terribly, went up inside and angled out late and just couldn't quite get there. Then, yeah, I mean, he has excuses in his 3 defeats, but at some point, these excuses start to become a pattern of excuses. And this, maybe the Belmont, the failing to break because he wasn't focused at the gate is something that is well within the control of that horse and that rider. And it gets to the point where you have to start being able to just blindly trust the figures. And while I'm going to be using Tacitus, I do have a hard time feeling great about it, especially when I think that 5-2 morning line is going to be closer to 9-5 when those time comes around. I do like Mott adding the blinkers. I know that's not historically a strong move for him, but this is a horse that I thought needed blinkers for a while. I don't necessarily want him closer to the pace, but I rather just think he needs a little more help focusing and not looking around when the gate opens and things like that. And I'm hoping that'll help him focus a little better. The workout reports seem to suggest that his last workout in the blinkers was his best one to date, so it seems to be going the right direction. But he's definitely a horse that is tough to use, strongly and confidently without using others. But he's obviously one that is capable of winning this race, and would be tough. But speaking of the pace, Mark, what do you think of the pace scenario in this race? Kind of interesting with the late edition.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think the pace in here is sort of murky. I mean, looking at bikinis has got to kind of go, right? And I mean, I mean, looking at bikinis to me is the horse that sort of needs to be on the front end, and if not just off, Mucho Gusto probably sits just off that as well. And beyond that, the pace is a little murky in here. I mean, who really wants to set this up? Like, it's an interesting race. But I do agree with you that the pace is a little head scratching in here. I don't know where it comes from, and I'm judging Mucho Gusto off from an off track performance. So was that pace setup due to the off track, or was it due to that's sort of how it was? Or yeah, the pace in here is very murky. Let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, we've already heard Danny Gargan saying that he's sending Tax. I mean, I think Tax has got to go from the 12 post.
Yeah, but I don't think Tax is good enough to make the lead here. I didn't say not good enough. Good enough's the wrong word. I don't think Tax is fast enough early to make the lead here. I just don't think he can. I mean, Gargan could go full send with a horse, but do you really want a Rad on the lead full send? If Danny Gargan is really going to full send Tax, I would toss him almost. To me, that's not the horse you want on the lead, especially from the outside in this race, if that's really his intent. I don't know. I mean, Scars Are Cool's got some pace. Looking at Bikini's got some pace. Mucho Gusto's got some pace. To me, Tax sits just off that, but I don't know if that's what Tax wants. I think Tax is one of those horses that, and I've said this before, I think he's sort of inherited the lead in his races. He hasn't been a horse that's necessarily been one that wants the lead, but he's just been the quality of the field, and so sort of inherited it. What happens when he's behind 3 horses? I don't know if that's necessarily good for him.
Yeah, I've been against Tax ever since the Withers, and I just didn't really think he beat anybody in that race. And looking, back now, I do have to give him some credit in the Jim Dandy. He broke well and got to the lead. War of Will just very keen and just unhappy being behind horses. So Caffleone made an early move to take the lead in the backstretch there. And to Tax's credit, he let the horse go by, didn't try to engage in a duel. A very mentally mature, horse to be able to let a horse go by and then repass around the far turn and still be able to hold off Tacitus. I was impressed by that. I do think that he's a useful horse. I do like him. I don't love him in this spot. I think the draw is going to be tough. Garden is on the record saying, we're going to send, so try to catch us. Maybe that's just trainer speak. Maybe it's not. I do think he needs to be forwardly placed to have a chance. Maybe not on the lead, but at least within a length of the pace. And I just have a hard time envisioning him truly good enough to wire a field like this. And if he's not on the lead or he's hung wide in that first turn, I can't see him holding off some of the closers or stalkers such as, Tacitus and company with, without a couple length head start and some questionable trips for the others.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I've also, being completely open, been very against tax for a long period of time. I know a lot of people, especially in Discord, have been really like tax. They've liked the angle. He's just been a horse that I've just really, kind of faded the piss out of. And his Jim Dandy burnt me really hard. I didn't use him in any of the structure of my horizontals there, so it beat me up pretty bad. It's hard. If you look at Saratoga historically, Jim Dandy winners have won the Travers about 45 to 50% of the time. But again, is that the winner or the best horse coming out of that race? And I think everybody who watched the race and Tacitus was the best horse. Obviously, he broke on his face and was, he should have been 10 lengths out of it, and he made up all that ground. It's a really hard race. Do you take the two horses coming out of the local prep, or do you want some of the new faces? And this time of year, you start to see those 3-year-olds who are late blooming, who are setting up for more of a classic run. Are those the horses you want in here?
All right, pause real quick because you went mute again.
Josh hit you with the mute button.
Yep, hit you with the mute button. All right, go for it again.
Sorry.
There you go. You're back.
Yeah, my internet catches up. So do you sort of want those horses that are coming? Those are the more fresh faces. Looking at Bikini, Scars are cool. Somebody like even a Mucho Gusto, a more lightly raced horse that's coming into this. Do you want those newer, fresher faces who are more of a prep for the classic or prepping to Breeders' Cup as their target for the year, instead of those faces that we've seen coming out of the Triple Crown races who are they getting a little leg weary at this point?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think we saw a prime example of that with War of Will. There's a horse who's probably just at the end of a pretty taxing campaign and needs a break. So I'm not a huge fan of tax, but I am interested in the other two horses who I expect to play a role in the early pace, who are the 7, Mucho Gusto, and 9. With Mucho Gusto, he was a bit of a late decision to send to the Travers from Baffert, and that does concern me a little bit. Game Winner was the initial Baffert horse that was supposed to be targeting the Travers, and whether he had a virus or something came up that ultimately derailed those plans. Mucho Gusto was a bit of a last-minute audible to getting pointed toward the Travers when he was really aiming toward the Pennsylvania Derby for the majority of his prep since the Haskell. So that does make me nervous that I don't love horses who aren't pointed toward a particular race, especially like the race at the Travers. But moving past that, I thought Mucho Gusto's Haskell was super impressive. He was wide around the turns. He got banged around at the start. I mean, yeah, it was a 4-horse field, but he was, definitely got the worst of the trips between him and Maximum Security. And I don't think there's a lot of question left that Maximum Security is probably the best 3-year-old male dirt horse in the country. So I think that realistically, Mucho Gusto running second by a length and a quarter is nothing to be ashamed of. Maximum Security would be 3 to 5 in this field. And I really think that Mucho Gusto is going to get a solid pace. He doesn't need the lead. He could take the lead if that's the way the race plays out. But he's going to be forwardly placed in a race that I think is going to favor the horses that can be within 2 or 3 lengths of the pace. Naira and Saratoga are kind of notorious for speeding up their track on Grade 1 days. I know that Chase had some stuff he wanted to share, but he's not able to be with us due to his flight getting delayed. But yeah, Naira notoriously speeds up their tracks, specifically in routes on the dirt on Grade 1 days. There's almost a 20% advantage to early pace setters and EP types on Brisnet compared to non-Grade 1 days. So I definitely am leaning towards we're going to be able to be close to the front. And Mucho Gusto fits that role, as well as looking at Bikinis, who is super lightly raced, only having 3 career starts, and this is a big ask. But this horse looked super in his maiden and looked pretty strong in his optional claiming after a long layoff. He had a super dead rail on a sloppy track in the Curlin Stakes, and I'm willing to kind of excuse that one. Watch the replay, you can literally see puddles of water along the rail where he was hemmed in for almost the entire race. So I'm willing to kind of give him a pass on that. I think that looking at Lucky's a strong stamina, and I don't think the distance should be a huge problem for him. And I think that he's one that could play a role at a pretty nice price. I don't think I like him as much as a few others, such as Tacitus or Mucho Gusto or a few others, but he's definitely one that I think is going to get overlooked based on that last effort where he was beaten by a few of these. And he's been working well and is going to get the right kind of pace that he could be dangerous.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, I know Chase had some figs on Naira on big days. Obviously, speed has been very good, especially in routes. You see a massive upgrade on E and EP, like EP7. So those really early positional speed for horses that are on the on the pace or just off the pace have done very well historically. And you can say they juice the track, or you can say that there's the bias or whatever. But on G1 days, those stats are really real. Again, yeah, I think that really does sort of move up a Mucho Gusto or looking at bikinis. And yeah. And again, it becomes the fact of what do you feel about Tacitus? And it's sort of baffling. I was looking at Bill Mott. His stats, first blinks, he's a 3% first blinks trainer. He's putting blinks on Tacitus here, trying to get him. And again, I think it's as we've said sort of here. I think it's more of like getting him to focus. If you looked at him in the lane in the Jim Dandy, he was very unfocused, looking around, looking at the crowd, ears going everywhere. He was not intent on finishing.
All right, your 30 seconds are up. Dude, it's like clockwork, man. Anyways, I think it's my turn to talk about the silver wig here. You can watch the replay and get you guys all get a little Baffert face here. Yeah, I mean, there are 4 horses I want in this race. I think I pretty much want all of Mucho Gusto here, as much as I can get. Ran a real good race at the Haskell. Once again, if you watch any of the seminar from our boy Jerry Brown, I mean, he just looks like he's ready to fire. On top of the 7, the only other horses I want are going to be horses that are going to be close to the lead. So the other horses I want the 9, looking at bikinis a little bit. Didn't exactly run the best race, but we had that weird rail, and of course, decided to try. I don't know what the heck his last ride was, but I think that looking at the works, 9's ready to fire. I want the 12 Tax. Think he's getting sent, but I mean, outside of the 7, I mean, I'm only using 9 and 12, a little bit. The other horse that I'm going to want is going to be the 1, Owendale. Won his Ohio Derby. Should have won the Preakness, but of course, War of Will decided to fire his race of the year and decided to go into retirement or something. But I think between those 4, I think we're going to get our winner out of those guys.
So to throw a wild card in here, what's everybody feel of highest honors? Because on the works, he had the best last out works on the works report. Yeah, he's a bit of a closer, probably needs a little pace set up in front of him, but you're getting Saez up. Yes, Jose got off, but anybody have any feel for here?
Well, it's a horse I had as a throwout on my first pass. I think he had a good trip, into an honest pace where he was on a more favorable part of the track last time, being pretty wide. So I was going to toss him, but based on those works, that's really hard to ignore how well he's been working. He really should be 3 for 3. If you watch that maiden race. He pretty much got checked into the rail and had to steady really badly. Still made up ground late, so it's a lightly raced horse, but it's pretty tough for me to trust him based off of just these efforts.
Well, if you look at the work pattern, though, too, real quick, if you look at the work pattern, he's got the same exact. He had that B plus work followed by A minus work before he fired the curling, and then after the curling, he's got another B plus work and another A minus work. So, I mean, there's a good chance he's going to fire his best race here again. And if you look at his last race, the curling, once again, it was muddy. It was a weird track, but he closed into not a very fast pace. So, whenever you have a closer that is able to close into a slower pace, you usually have to take notice. So, yeah, I mean, I think you guys talked me into probably needing to use the 3 here, too, especially after looking at those works and the work pattern going into this next race.
Yeah, to the one.
Yeah, the horse I actually would probably take if I'm going to go closer that isn't Tacitus is like the horse I can't believe we're just mentioning now, but Coat of Honor. I've been against this horse forever, and I think I've said this horse needs grass, 1.25 miles is too far, and I think I'm finally on board with the fact that this horse really just looks legit. I mean, he doesn't run a bad race. His Florida Derby, he had no chance against that pace. His Kentucky Derby was really good, and there's a good chance that he may have finished better. Not saying he'd have won, but when Maximum Security veered out and then overcorrected way to the inside, Code of Honor definitely shied and seized up a little bit. And then most recently, his Dwyer was just incredibly impressive visually. He was dead last in a pace that was incredibly slow, and just went around those horses like they weren't even moving. I mean, just an awesome effort visually under a hand ride. Shug McGahee has won this race 3 times, is super confident in this horse. And for a guy like Shug to come out and say those things, I tend to believe him. The distance is a bit of a question. I don't know if it's where he's going to be best, but I don't think it's out of his reach. And this is a horse that I'm super interested in, who's going to need a little bit of pace help. But he seems to be the one getting overlooked a little bit between all of the discussion around Tacitus and Taxi coming from Jim Dandy.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I mean, I think there is a price where Code of Honor becomes interesting. To me, that price is just much more than the morning line. I think if he's anywhere near 4-1, he's not that interesting. He's a horse that I think probably is a little better at shorter, and I think he just doesn't quite quality-wise fit here. I just don't see that standout performance. I mean, yeah, his Dwyer was great, but who'd he be? And not that I want to be that person, but I just don't see the quality here. I expect he's sort of run his best races. He's going to run a 95 and 97. I don't think that beats this. I don't have a problem with somebody liking him, but I think you have to like him at more like 8 or 9-1, less at 4-1.
Yeah, the price is. I think it will be a little high, 4-1. That 97 buyer is actually just ran. I'm not too far off him on speed figures, but the distance is the biggest question for me. Is if him and Tacitus are neck and neck turning for home, I'm going to want Tacitus. But I'm just hoping he finds a way to work out a slightly better trip and a slightly better price.
Yeah, completely agree. If him and Tacitus are neck and neck, you take Tacitus, all day and twice on a Saturday. But I think he needs to work out a trip. and Tacitus has to have a bad trip. Again, Tacitus is making a change. It may move Tacitus up and focus him. It could also regress him. So if Tacitus doesn't fire his race, yeah, I mean, this race is one of those ones I had wanted to be really cute and just love Tacitus and be single A. And the more I look at this race, this is really rough.
I mean, you're asking if Tacitus has a bad trip. Has he had a good trip yet?
Okay, there's two ways to look at Tacitus. Has he had a good trip or has he invented terrible trips? There are certain horses that consistently find trouble. Is he been a horse that's found trouble, or has he been a horse that has had bad trips? You can look at it two different ways. For me, I think he's had bad trips, but there's an argument there that certain horses are prone to finding trouble.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. I think he's a horse that you'll feel kind of dumb if he beats you and you're 4 deep. But if you don't want to single A him or single him at all, or if you're going to be skinny because you love somebody else here, maybe you love Mucho Gusto or somebody else, I wouldn't blame you for taking a shot again because it's going to be a short price. Everybody's going to be watching his trouble in Jim Dandy and trying to, use him in this spot here, especially with that pedigree, the connections, and everything else. I guess the one horse I would give out as a underneath play if you're looking for a bomb might be the 8 Chess Chief. I don't think this horse can win, but we're talking about Dallas Stewart here. This is a horse or a trainer who's notorious for just ruining horizontal players' days with getting these 30-to-1s to run way better than they really should. And you might get 60-to-1 or 70-to-1 on this horse come, the actual post time. Maybe not with Mike Smith on, but this is a horse who kind of dawdled around sprinting at the maiden. And they stretched him out in round 2 turns, and he woke up a little bit. Kind of hung out there a little bit more, and then once they put blinkers on, he's really seemed to turn the corner a little bit. His last 5 or 6 buyers have all gone up or paired at the very least. And he's lost his last 2 races to Mr. Money, who would probably be the favorite or second choice in a race like that. I mean, granted, he was never a threat to Mr. Money, but this is a horse that, well, yes, I don't think he wants to go this far. There's definitely some class questions. He's going the right direction. He's on the improve, and Dallas, has been known for horses that improve as they get older. This could be one of those late developing fields, and maybe in the bottom of a trifecta at 50-to-1, this is a horse you might want.
Yeah, I can't pick on you at all for any of that. Horse is a horse that I'm going to be using probably is a B or a C. I'm not quite sure yet, but you do realize you're touting a horse that's still eligible for N2X conditions, right?
Oh yeah, the horizontal value. Unless you're going very deep in this race, I won't even use him on top. But he's a horse that could be, he's a closer in a race. But the blinkers seem to help him get a little more forwardly placed. You get up Big Money Mike for as much shit as we talk about him. And he just seems like the type, if you're a sheep player, he's got a pretty progressive pattern. If Tom's listening, he would agree with that. That he's definitely moving forward a lot, running a pair of 6s, a 7, a 5, and a 4. For those of you keeping score at home, you'll probably need something in the ballpark of 0 to a -1 to win this. We're playing golf rules, so lower is better. And he would definitely need to improve. He definitely has the pattern, the type to improve enough to get a piece of a big price.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that at all. To me, on the buyer's figs, he's been consistently improving. He kind of takes a small step forward every race. He's gone to the 60s, to the 70s, to the mid 80s, now he's up to a 90. I would expect him to run a 92, 94 buyer here. I would expect the winner to be more in the 100 fig. So I don't put him on top, but he's a horse that could definitely suck up and get a third at absolutely massive price, and I have no issues with that whatsoever.
All right, so why don't we go around real quick and just top pick, pretty quick. Pack.
Oh God, top pick in the Travers. Jeez. I had been trying to slam Tacitus And I've been trying to talk everyone into single egging Tacitus as much as I really want to. But there's a part of me that just sort of, I don't really know. Yeah, I think if you're going to make me pick a horse, it's going to be Tacitus. We know he handles the ground here. If he can invent a trip, blinks go on, he gets a little bit more focused. I think my horse here is Tacitus. I'm probably eating chalk with saying that, but I'm okay with that.
I respect Tacitus, completely respect. He'll be probably a top 2 to 3 pick on my ticket. I'm going to go with Mucho Gusto. This is a horse that I think the pace sets up a lot better for him versus somebody like a Code of Honor or somebody like a Tacitus. There's been a lot of talk about the distance being an issue. I've never seen any reason he can't go this far. He's by Mucho Macho Man, who won the Year's Cup Classic. He's got Giants Causeway as a damn side. Done well going long. And just watching his races visually, the exception of the Sunland Derby, where he burned up the pace at just stupid fractions, I've never seen a reason why the distance should really challenge this horse. I think he gets the best pace setup. He should be able to avoid any trouble or any troubled trips. And Talamo comes east just to ride this horse. So I think that if I had to pick one, he's the one that I would put on top. And I think he's the only horse in here with the 100 buyer thing as well.
Yeah, he is the only triple-digit buyer score fig horse in here. And I will say, though, and again, this is, whatever superstition or something else, but Baffert is not flying east to watch the Travers, which is an oddity for him. He is always in Saratoga, so it sort of makes you scratch your head. Yes, he's got a big horse in Del Mar, but he always tends to come east for the Travers. So makes you kind of go, is he really live?
Dude, they're gonna be on the phone with Baffert, and he's gonna be like, "Oh, I didn't even realize I had a horse running in the Travers, and he won. Oh, great!
No.
Like that Grade 2
That's
turf
right.
race in Del Mar a couple weeks ago. I'm with Caleb. I think Mucho Gusto wins this. Definitely my top pick. I mean, there's a couple other horses in here that I like, but only horse with 100 buyer fits the pace scenario perfectly. Like Caleb was saying, I think the sheets look good for him. I think, and people were making the thing about oh, Mike Smith is there and he's not running, but Talamo's ridden Mucho Gusto the entire time. So I don't care that Mike Smith's not on Mucho Gusto. I mean, I think that the Mucho Gusto makes 100% sense here.
Yeah, I quite honestly would take Talamo over Mike Smith as a jock. I think the Mike Smith hype is we've talked about this on Discord more than once, but it's very well overdone. Mike gets handed some very, very cake mounts. Let's put it that way.
All right, that's the entire. Those are all the stakes races. We got through them. We got any other races that you wanted to talk to or look at? Any other closing comments here?
Yeah, I would just say that personally, I quite honestly, not to dig the late pick 5, I think it does get a little chalky. To me, the sequence here is really the early. I think there's a huge amount of value. If you have work reports, take a look at some of the horses on the early. There's some real nice prices on that early sequence. You tend to see on Travers Day a lot of horse trainers will bring out their sort of big name horses. They're the world's fastest horse and drop them in. And so I think you're going to see some really interesting ones early. The late pick 5, the early pick 5 to me is very juicy, and I think it's when you can get a little spready and you can invent some stuff that's going to pay out real well.
Yeah, I agree. Don't sleep on the early sequence because could be more value there. One thing I guess I would share is from a betting structuring perspective. Find the races where you're most confident in, and then go skinny there, and then spread otherwise looking for prices. And that sounds pretty obvious, but don't feel like you need to beat a favorite if favorite looks like he can't lose. It's okay to take a free square and move on. It's okay to single Chancelot or Bisou or Come Dancing or whatever horse you think can't lose, and spread later on, couple horses that maybe wouldn't be your top 2 or 3 or 4, but when you get those singles, it allows you to have a lot more ticket flexibility later on in the season. And on a day like the Travers, with as much money and dumb money that's going to be in those pools, it oftentimes pays better than you think it should, even if it's a series of 2 short prices, 2 logicals, and maybe or medium priced long shot.
Yeah, to build on what Caleb just said, the late pick 5 today paid about 30% more than it would have on your average day, because the quote unquote dumb money coming in, and people playing names and trainers and that sort of thing, seeing where things pay a lot better than they really should. This is the kind of sequence where eat your chalk where you should, and try to find some prices where they make sense. Don't try to reinvent the wheel here. I think you can. This sequence really sets up nice late for the smaller player who wants to get queued a couple times and can really clean themselves into a pick 5 quite easily, and with a nice price on it.
Yeah, I mean, I see, especially in the late pick 5, I see, I mean, if as long as you make a stand there between a late and midnight Bisu, you could easily have 2 cold singles in the late pick 5. Or you could use both.
Quite honestly, I think of this late pick 5, you could, I think you could have 2 singles. You could effectively turn it into a pick 3, eat a late and midnight Bisu both as A's, and then buy a couple of legs, and you get a situation where you could catch a couple of 20-1 shots that you could be into a real cheap ticket that you could find some real depth in, and I think you could do that quite easily.
So just thinking about this late pick 5 real quick, where do you think, like, which horse do you think presents the most value in this late pick 5 then? I think I'm on probably Conquest Hard Candy. I think is going to be available at a price, and I think it's got a real good shot at winning the Boston Spa.
Yeah, I have no problem with that Conquest Hard Candy angle. Quite honestly, I think it's a horse that's at a price that you could really catch and get value. There's a number of horses in here that I think could really show up, and you could get that sort of value angle. I don't know if I really have one that's the best. Yeah,
it's a tough question with all the having everything prepared. I would think that 2 I would look at would be probably in the Boston Spa, which is race 8, would be the 5 Indian Blessing. If you actually get 8-1 or anything near that, I think that's probably the best spot you might catch a price, and the best horse you might get a price on. I would take 8-1 on that horse all day. Alternatively, I think it would be somebody in the Sword Dancer, whether it's Channel Cat in the neighborhood of 5 or 6-1, or perhaps it's Pillar Mountain ends up running. I think pretty overlooked and could be upwards of 10-1. Both of whom I'm pretty interested in, and those I'd be using pretty strongly. Or even Sadler's Joy in the.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think Sadler's Joy probably gets overlooked on this race. I think you're going to get better than Morning Line on Sadler's Joy. I would be really shocked if you don't. Completely agree with you on Indian Blessing. I think Indian Blessing, if you get anywhere near 8-1, it's a horse just looks amazing at that kind of a price. I don't know if the pace setup is perfect, but I think Indian Blessing is anywhere near that kind of a price is a lot of value here.
Yeah, so I think the key would be to take your shots in the races that it looks pretty obvious, and then spread and probably the Sword Dancer and the Boston Spa and try to go price on it.
Completely agree.
We're all going to the ATM after Chancelot breaks like shit, aren't we? Or Pau Show thinks Louis Saez might come out of the locker room and just tackle the horse.
Well, the last time I made a sweeping declaration where I said D-Wayne Lucas is and I'll let him beat me if he goes 1 for 78. He beat me with a 22-1 horse that went wire to wire, and he went. Not only did he go 1 for 78, but then he then won with another 2-year-old. So if you're listening, D-Wayne Lucas, give me a tip next time.
Yeah, when D-Wayne Lucas is legit with his 2-year-olds, I mean, he's 1 for 77 and then he goes 2 straight. You're like, really? Like, come on. Yeah, that was brutal. Yeah, that hurt a lot.
Cool. Well, I'm guessing, Pack, you're going to have your ticket posted sometime tomorrow morning. I'm sure after we take a look at weather and if we got any scratches. Caleb, I'm sure you're going to share your ticket as well in the Discord. Yeah, I mean, we got through all the races. We missed Chase, who's delayed in... Is he still in... is he in flight or is he still in...
I think he's in Dallas. Was last time we heard, wasn't he? He was in an airport. He was going to call in, so...
All right, guys. Well, thank you guys for watching. We did this once again in about an hour and a half, so not bad for a graded stakes breakdown. So thank you guys for watching, and we will see you guys later.